The Soviet Union, a country so big and at the same time kind of mysterious for those outside. For those inside? Well, first of all, isn't this differentiation on the inside and outside kind of weird? This video is more about Soviet cars, but to understand Soviet car, we will also dive into Soviet people mentality, what's going on in their heads. As I'm Ukrainian, this video will probably be the first one where I talk only directly from my, or rather my family experience. As I wasn't born in Soviet Union, but my parents and grandparents were born there, and oh boy, even now, 30 years later, the shadow of this regime is still hanging around. Imagine that you have money. This is probably a painful phrase in 2025, but it was even more painful in Soviet Union in the 1970s. This guy was on TV to get food and any nice goods you needed to stay in long queues. Not even like that. First you see a huge queue, you quickly rush to stay in it, and only after you ask what's actually for sale. This way Soviet people were getting food, stuff like butter, meat and kolbasa. Anyways, imagine what was going on in the car market. Just having enough money wasn't enough.
Как же можно меня выгонять? Я за машину родину продал. Что?
To get a car, you first needed to be in a queue for several months. But getting into the queue also wasn't for everybody. Well, it was for everybody, but at each facility there was a committee that was choosing a person from a queue, based on their achievements.
Ты мне скажи, на какие заработки заместитель директора трикотажной фабрики отгрохал себе двухэтажный особняк?
Семен Васильевич, это его дело.
Нет, наша.
So the privilege of getting a car was only for big political or science workers, though the first ones were getting anything they wanted, so that doesn't count. Just saying this is already hilarious, but for Soviet people it wasn't as funny. A good salary in Soviet society was around 150 rubles per month. This was the salary of managers on big industry facilities. A car costs around 5,000 to 8,000 rubles. If we convert it to the modern dollar, we get 92,000 US dollars. But if we convert it using people's salaries here and there, we'll get as much as $280,000. Imagine gathering such money and afterwards still not being able to buy what you want. A life story about how my grandpa actually got one. He was one of the leading experts in metal welding, and the facility he worked at needed to fix a complicated machine in the factory. My grandpa made his boss a simple proposition. He would solve the problem, and in return, his boss would help him get a car. The problem was solved, and his boss kept his word. So my grandpa was able to choose the car he wanted. Not for free, of course, the full price still had to be paid. He waited for a few months, and then he got his first car. So, what did he get? Finally, I'm talking about something more related to the car world. Here are all models that Soviet Union has ever mass-produced. If you wonder what those are called, well, some pretty popular names now are Lada, but Lada actually appeared during the 1970s and was a name for cars purely for export. In Soviet Union these were called pretty simple. Most commonly, the name of the car brand fully depended on where it was built. So, for example, this is VAZ, from Volsky Автомобильный завод. Translating into English, we will get a Volsky car factory. Pretty similar to BMW, right? As from German, BMW is Bayerische Motorenwerke, which is also something like Bavarian Motor Company. But in Soviet Union, this was taken on a whole another level, as we had ZAZ, KRAZ, GAZ, VAZ, KAMAZ, LAZ, PAZ, LiAZ, UAZ, MAZ, BELAZ, ERAZ, TAZ, and ZIL. That broke everything. All these brands were making different kinds of transport, though we will focus on passenger cars only, meaning these: ZAZ, GAZ, VAZ, also maybe UAZ. So the main player here is of course VAZ, with their first car for people, VAZ 2101, or how it was called between people, копійка, which in translation will mean a cent, as the model name ends on 1. Later on will appear VAZ 2103 and VAZ 2106, which will bring some minor performance improvements, like 1.5 liter engines, though from a comfort point of view, nothing has changed through the years. As fun fact, all VAZ cars were called zhiguli in Soviet Union because the factory line was located near Zhiguli mountains, but for export cars this name wasn't used, as apparently this word sounds just like word gigolo in English, which has not that pleasant meaning. Probably no one wanted a car being associated with that term, so it was called a Lada instead, and this name is easier to pronounce too. Coming back to the car that my grandpa got. Of course it was a cent. I hope you will allow me to call it копійка as we move on. So that was копійка in bright yellow color. Coincidentally, my second grandpa also had the same car. So that's the one in which I was able to be driven in. Getting into the car itself, first of all what you feel, it's pretty robust. It was based on Fiat 124 as I remember, but was adapted to aggressive Soviet conditions. Maybe it's overall about quality of materials back then, but this feel of robustness definitely is cool. Starting just with doors, even with door handles. It's not a plastic, it's not even aluminium, it's a thick piece of stainless steel. And even though it looks like it's fragile, with those small thin window frames, but nope, it's not. You may have seen videos where people close doors on G-Wagons, so closing these also is a similar experience. Not only because locks are doing everything except holding the door, but also this hard metal clunk it makes, it's pretty fun.
Садись, дверьми не хлопай только.
Though funny stuff ends here. You may have guessed that these weren't any powerful, nor comfortable, nor reliable, but with reliability there is a different story, to which I will come back later. If we discuss how these were made, what engines were used and stuff like that, then it all was pretty similar among usual road cars. I will use копійка as an example. It had different models through the years, with no radical changes in design, slight engine changes. It also had a wagon body named VAZ 2102. From technical specs, always rear-wheel drive, coupled with 4-cylinder 1.2 liter engine, 64 horsepower, with average fuel consumption about 8 liters per 100 kilometers. Also it had 17 centimeters of clearance, just like modern Jeep Renegade. As you can see, not a beast. Still, for people it was enough. And paired with 950 kilograms of weight, it's not bad overall. About comfort, what I remember is pretty soft seats on the back, without any back support. Also, another thing from life, what I remember is a ginormous rear view mirror that my grandpa had on his копійка. It wasn't originally fitted to a car, but damn, was that thing big. It was actually somewhere that big. Yeah. I suggest we move on. Another comfortable thing was a heater. Done. If you wonder, electrically operated windows or mirrors, that wasn't even in dreams. People just didn't know that was a thing. So, as they didn't know, they didn't want it. Just getting a car was already a miracle. You think people would complain about anything? You probably already know that Soviet cars weren't in any way reliable, so I will tell you how people were dealing with it.
Я ведь в автомобилях дока. И всякую профилактику, и любой ремонт.
Я знаю. Вы великий народный умелец.
When the car wasn't working properly, there were people who knew how to fix it. More, on VAZ 2103 there were pretty thick cylinder walls, so people started modifying it by boring the walls to increase performance. This is a great example of how people nicely adapt to rough conditions. Something broke, not a problem, we can fix it, at least we have a car. That was the mentality back then. Wasn't it oriented on cars only? Overall, it was easier to fix things than buy new. And I sometimes notice it even now. Only when something completely fails, then we get anything new. Stuff like changing phones every year. Well, you probably get it. Also, of course, what played a huge role in easy car fixes is that those weren't over-engineered. Remember manually adjusted windows? Yeah, zero electrics, pure mechanics, equals easier to get new parts and put them into place. Were there any premium cars? Yeah, if you want to call it that. Somewhere around twice the price you could have gotten the Volga.
Sit down, please.
Это что, твоя машина?
Садись, садись, мальчишка.
Чего себе. Волга, да?
В некотором роде.
These were trying to get closer to American, big, heavy premium cars. I wasn't driven in one, but my dad was, and as he describes it, it's like a boat on wheels. Very heavy body, very soft suspension, very comfy seats. It flies on the road. The car could even be equipped with a cassette player and 2 speakers in the back.
Ты знаешь, это малогабаритная квартира. А это что такое?
Да, Филлипс. Стереофонический магнитофон.
Вмонтированы, да?
2 динамика, слева и справа.
It wasn't anywhere close to what was considered premium in the West, but for the Soviets, it was top-notch. Or was it? In the Soviet Union there were people and politicians. The last ones, of course, were treated differently. Heck, there was even a special store called Beriska, or to English The Birch, where you could buy literally anything you wanted, even a car, but not for rubles, for foreign currencies. And the only way to get foreign currencies is business trips abroad. This was a privilege for big science groups or politicians. You probably already see what's the problem here. And to make matters worse, to really show who's the boss here, Chaika was created. Big luxurious limousine, which didn't solve any reliability issues, though it definitely did what it was created for. To show off in front of people who needed to stay in queues just to get food. Nice one, huh? About food though, in Soviet Union there were farms. Not farms, but kolkhozy, meaning collective farms. People were working there together, everybody, except these of course. People were working there for free, and those who didn't want to, well, they experienced hard consequences. Gosh, it really sounds like slavery, though nobody was questioning much.
Кто вас отправлял на эту овощную базу?
Данную отправили всю мою лабораторию, всех моих научных сотрудников. И я посчитал невозможным для себя не пойти вместе с ними. Причем привык я работать добросовестно. И если я при окладе в 500 рублей пакую картофель, то я отвечаю за каждую картофелину. Жалобы на качество были?
Вроде нет.
But never there were any cars that suited farmers' needs. So what was used was GAZ 2495 or some homemade modified versions of regular cars. So somewhere around 80s appeared VAZ 2121 or Niva. That was the first Soviet off-road oriented car, or at least one that had legit four-wheel drive. Was it good? Well, at least it was something. I really didn't want to mention or show this city in the video, just thinking about it makes me want to throw up, but unfortunately the cars we're about to talk about could only be found here. It was the capital of the Soviet Union and consequently a gathering place for cultural and political figures. Only these people could afford foreign cars. I say afford, but it wasn't really about the money, It was about status and a person's position in society. You either had to be part of political elite, a globally famous figure, or lucky enough to work abroad. And even then, it still wasn't really about the money, it was about status, loyalty and connections. On this footage you can see the Mercedes going by. Or in this film we can also spot a Mercedes, which by the plot was owned by the head of the local marketplace, basically the person in charge of managing all the stalls, vendors and goods flow. In Soviet times, that position wasn't just about keeping the market organized, it also meant controlling who sold what and at what price. With so much in short supply, having that kind of power often meant access to rare goods, extra income on the side and valuable connections.
Мне нужен магнитофон заграничный, американский или немецкий?
Вот есть очень хороший, отечественный.
Спасибо, отечественный не подойдет.
Заграничный надо изыскивать.
Я понимаю, сколько?
50.
50? Ну, возьмите себя в руки.
That's how someone like her could end up with something as rare as Mercedes in the USSR. If we talk about real figures that had cars like this, a nice example is Vladimir Vysotsky, a very popular Soviet actor and musician. He bought a Mercedes 450 SL in Germany in the mid-1970s, making him one of the very few private Soviet citizens to drive such a luxury car, thanks not just to his fame, but also to connections and official government permission. So that's the whole philosophy and feeling about Soviet cars. The regime where everyone was constantly lacking something, with a corrupt government and managers, where there was no competition on the market because of the government monopoly on production, there just couldn't be created anything good, or even anything decent. Through the years people had no choice of what to buy, and where, and when, so they were very happy to get at least something. Yeah, it would be covered in rust within a week, and the engine and other mechanical parts weren't reliable at all, but thank God it was as simple as it gets, so if something happened, you could fix it.